and in the intrusion of unwarranted matter, owing to not perceiving where the core of the original lies. Woke intersectional vandalizations of our beloved stories. The patriarchy. What the hell was that? The message.
It's just mind-blowing. Hello, a few months ago I reacted to an IGN video where Corey Olsen, the Tolkien Professor, was shown to be intellectually dishonest. He was shown to willfully misinterpret or straight up go against the law of Middle-earth. That is one extreme. However, for every Corey Olsen, the rebalancer are videos such as this one from Nerdrotic. Now, I want to be perfectly clear that fanaticism either way is not the play here, but the trend for many channels, not just Nerdrotic, I want to make that clear, but it advocates for people to not watch the show, at least unless you're picking out all the faults for humorous masochism for your once beloved franchise. There is an element of hypocrisy here though, because you'd think that perhaps if he were serious, then he would not make so many videos on the series, given that all publicity is good publicity. Now, I would advise that we begin, or before we begin, that the only way to make up your mind is to watch the show for yourself when it is available. And it's the duplicity of this kind of content that bothers me. It bothers me because it falls into the same trap that Corey Olsen and IGN did with their over-the-top apologeticism. It's a bit of a word. And everyone scolded them for it. He intentionally reads quotations or clips with the sole purpose of giving one conclusion. And as literature fans know, a quotation can often be used both for and against a statement depending on your intent. His intent is clearly to make the show look bad and thus has no interest in discussing the other side because this benefits him most. I personally think that though this is a disservice to your audience because hey, like they might miss out on something they might have liked. Right, enough of that.
They hired two inexperienced showrunners with only one partial credit to their name and J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, that being a bad Star Trek movie.
In this video, there's going to be a bombardment of equivalencies of bad projects with the Rings of Power. The video begins and you instantly get the reminder that the showrunners have done nothing apart from being involved with Star Trek, which was bad. And well, I suppose you could say that because they were not in a leading role there, then they didn't really have much of a say.
Now we've already gotten a teaser, a Superfans video, a teaser of a teaser, and finally another teaser with some actual spoken dialogue, which...
This Superfan video is undoubtedly, well, to use the word, cringe. And if you want to look at any other marketing hype jobs out there, though, then this isn't really out of the ordinary. And it does fit the bill of who actually even cares about this stuff once the real content is out, right? But he does subtly weave it in between like listing all the teasers with the action of highlighting the like-dislike ratios and then actively clicking the dislike at the beginning of the video. Now you could take this as evidence that no matter what, he is going to dislike it and he is going to endorse like-minded individuals or his fans to do the same. Don't watch the content, guys. Just blindly hate it. Hear my message. And yeah, more on the dislike button a little bit later.
There was a time when the world was so young.
Ah, yes, a time before woke intersectional vandalizations of our beloved stories.
In the time that he hears the first line, there was a time where the world was so young, he is able to deduce that he dislikes the trailer. And for what reason? Woke intersectional feminism vandalizations of our beloved stories. How has he managed to get all of that? Anyway, what else has he got to say?
Even then, there was light.
There was light.
I love gold.
This is some bottom of the barrel humor, and to compare it with Goldmember, like that is a big stretch, but it does help him out with his overarching theme to everything here.
All right, we start the trailer with either CG Numenor or the CG Grey Havens.
If you didn't know, then everything here sucks because it's CGI. Now, of course, you can do a lot with the green screen, but it does look fake and can definitely ruin immersion if everything is filmed so. However, I would also question how Nerdrotic would want to have a non-CGI Numenor, Grey Havens, or Valinor, as these are, idyllic settlements of grandeur and beauty that you cannot hope to emulate or find similar of in the real world. This is like a fantasy within a fantasy world.
A voiceover by Morfydd Clark's Galadriel, who was nothing like J.R.R. Tolkien's Galadriel or even Cate Blanchett's Galadriel.
As he is just showing a picture of these characters and the actresses, I'm assuming that he means by the appearance and isn't talking about any of the actual action. He is correct that both Cate and Morfydd are far shorter than what Galadriel would have been, but I would argue that Cate and Morfydd do look like Galadriel in this picture that he is showing. You cannot deny that there is a resemblance here. They look very similar, but he is. So judge it for yourself, what you can see and whether or not they look similar. And if it is only the height, let's not forget that Viggo Mortensen was 7 inches shorter than what Aragorn should have been. And, well, I mean, Nerdrotic does kind of put the Peter Jackson trilogy up a level on a bit of a pedestal, as we'll see later on.
Call to me, lands far away.
What the hell was that? Are they riffing on the Ent and the Entwife song?
Oh, we get some somber music here. Do you think you liked it? The Entwife song is like so. And no, it is not the same. How many are either going to know this off the top of their head, or they're going to fact check this and then challenge it? This willful spreading of misinformation is to promote hysteria, and it is compounded by the use of a bloke of Arabian ethnicity rapping in the foreground.
Probably refer to this as riffing on Tolkien at some point. And this is not an accident.
The idea is to plant the idea that Tolkien is being rescored by DJ Khaled now or something. Remember that the origin of this idea, a somber musical tune with no obvious known origin, but it's in fitting with the rugged and bleak mountainous terrain that we are viewing. And then look at what he is suggesting. It's just mind-blowing.
Elves have forests to protect. Dwarfs their minds.
Sauron is after me, Lucky Charms.
Of course, there's a leprechaun imitation for the hobbits because you need to mock every single part of the video. This woman sounds like she's got a bit of an Irish accent, but I saw another trailer where Sir Lenny Henry was speaking, and he definitely sounds like he's got more of a West Country accent, which is an area famous for being rural and where, they make a lot of cider. And that is how they speak there, out in the English countryside.
But we Harfoots have each other.
For I must now wander this wandering day.
We're safe.
Oh, see, Tolkien fans, they use the word wander, just like in All That Is Gold Does Not Glitter, not all those who wander are lost. Bilbo's poem about Strider.
Anyhow, Nerdrotic shoehorns in another point here because the song used the word wander as the hobbits were on screen. I really thought he would have had said safe because, I really hope these hobbits get wrecked.
And we have our hobbits of color, Harfoots, who we wouldn't want to confuse with hobbits due to rights issues, who Tolkien never mentioned in any of the major events of the Second Age.
So he reminds us of this poem about Aragorn, and he specifically wishes to say hobbits of colour, despite the fact that Harfoots are of a certain colour different to the hobbits that we know from The Lord of the Rings, because at that point they would have all assimilated. But that reinforces his message that our stuff is being ruined by political activists, or just people that aren't white, I suppose. It's honestly just another shoehorn. That said, he is correct about the hobbits not being in the Second Age, and honestly, I don't know why they are there, but hey ho. But I'm not entirely certain, does this guy know that Harfoots are mentioned by Tolkien? They are like a real thing, they aren't just made up, and isn't that which fans of the lore have gripes about. It's the fact that they're in the Second Age. So anyway, who knows? This is just an exercise in spreading misinformation anyway.
And this is obviously Moria or Khazad-dûm, and they look okay. Not exactly blown away considering how much money was spent on this.
This is the only compliment to the show in this entire 18-minute video. 18 minutes. Well, okay, there is another one, but it is recycled. Even then, he has to spin it in a way that it doesn't get turned around upon him by his own mob because it doesn't look perfect to him. Kind of like how I just did. I mean, fair enough. I don't personally get all the greenery, but I have been corrected that it isn't necessarily impossible to have it in a mountain cave system like this.
And here it says based on the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. And I don't know if you've noticed or not, but there's been a bit of a shift in the marketing language. What would Tolkien do? Probably gouge your eyes out with this pipe.
But isn't this a good thing, though? Because it shows that they aren't looking to replace the lore. The shift in the language also shows the awareness that people would realize that, this isn't going to be a like-for-like story as written by Bilbo Baggins in Rivendell for what would become the Silmarillion, which, well, they couldn't do anyway. So, of course, they are going to make stuff up. I, for one, prefer this to the notion like, hey, this is going to be the novel that Tolkien never wrote, implying that this is going to be even better, right? By distancing themselves slightly, then it creates this little pocket where the two can be more easily distinguishable and separable, kind of like how the Shadow of Mordor game storylines are.
And there we have two scenes cut together with a voiceover by Robert R. Mayo's Elrond, who looks far more like a young Ned Stark who he played in Game of Thrones.
Oh, it's about time to get to the less nuanced clips once again. Arameo's face is his face. What else is there to say? Like, I'd say he's going to look like young Ned Stark every day of his life, but he can still play other roles as his job is acting. Oh, and it's been a minute since he mentioned the woke intersectional vandalizations thing out of nowhere again. So, yeah.
But he does represent one thing in this trailer, the patriarchy.
Wait, what? Patriarchy? What?
To be clear, this is forced and cringe dialogue.
He is just spouting out buzzwords to rile people up.
And Warrior Galadriel, who looks like she bathed in Cheetos in this scene, shout out to Nerd Cookies, represents intersectional feminism.
The thing with literature or films is that each person can interpret it in different ways, but it is just such a stretch to immediately say that this is intersectional feminism, which, by the way, is, of course, invading our beloved work, if you didn't know.
Why in the hell would Elrond be talking to Galadriel, his elder and eventual grandmother, like this?
The power dynamic is firmly in her favor because it's Galadriel. She's the boss of every elven court in the Second Age, and she's the most senior and powerful elf in the lands east of the sea, and it has always been like that in Lord of the Rings. But he has to mention it, though, doesn't he?
A woman can only be empowered when she's one-upping a man.
I wouldn't even say that she's one-upping him here, because Elrond might be learned in lore, but he is still a young elf. And as Nerdrotic says, they are going to be family members later on. In fact, they already are, very loosely. And she's simply telling him that he doesn't know much of the world, and maybe even respect your elders.
The legend begins of Warrior Galadriel, or quite possibly the biggest flop in television history.
So is it going to be the biggest flop? Of course, this guy only covers the biggest flops, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, where Disney were panicking as they struggled with the massive success that series had. Admittedly, though, some of these shows, that they are going to probably suck. But the only one I've seen is the Star Wars series, and I personally loved the ending. And so, as a Tolkien fan, I hope that Amazon panics and has a nuclear meltdown for a great show.
Darkness will march over the face of the earth.
And our imaginations.
How can he be so desperate to say something bad about literally anything?
The message. Oh, look, the female orcs. Women, do you feel seen?
I didn't actually realize that those were orcs until that close up, but yeah, how grotesque. Oh yeah, and another point about diversity in a mocking tone. Remember, guys, this is just an exercise in political activism. And so is the Rings of Power.
The message.
I am sorry.
I'm just not buying Robert R. Mayo as Elrond. The dwarves look fine.
Yeah, there isn't really anything wrong with not liking a casting choice, and I'm not really the biggest fan of this one either. I was just shocked at how reasonably put the point was without any jibe thrown in there.
And they look like they're walking in front of a green screen.
Oh, there it is.
And yes, this looks a lot like Tormund Giantsbane climbing the wall in Game of Thrones, and we all know what Jeff Bezos said he wanted. Now, considering this is Amazon fan fiction and they're making most of this up as they go,
I think because being made by a creator, one of our natural faculties is wishing to create. But since we aren't creators, we have to sub-create. Let's say we have to rearrange the primary material in some particular form, which pleases us, which it isn't necessarily a moral pleasing, it's partly an aesthetic pleasing.
and they're making most of this up as they go. It could be anything, or it could be the flight of the Noldor over the Helcarax. And they just wanted it to look like Game of Thrones.
Is wishing to create, but since we aren't creators, we have to sub-create.
And here we go. The next franchise that now obviously sucks, Game of Thrones, and that is the next in line to be equated. Now, he makes a good point of the Helcarax, although I'm not sure if any of that survived past the first stage when the lands were sundered. But the main point here is that everything's going to be made up at short notice as they go along, right? And it's going to be like Game of Thrones, which I'm sure everyone remembers having an awful reception to its rushed ending, but it's implied that this is the level of product that we shall see.
The past is with us all.
The past is dead. We either move forward or we die with it.
There it is. They go full Last Jedi.
So we've had bad Star Trek, Game of Thrones, and now we have the Star Wars sequels in the equivalency pool. Excellent choice because, well, I'm sure that will go down with his viewership. Now, I am a Star Wars fan, but I haven't seen all the sequels because I just wasn't all that bothered past the first one. So I can't really comment on the comparison contextually, but it's clear that this is a case of impending doom.
This is a trailer. Every single detail is meticulously poured over for marketing purposes. And yes, certain speech is supposed to have double meaning.
Words in a trailer can have more than just double meaning. For me, though, this is Elendil speaking about the troubles that they have with the rise of Sauron on Numenor and the rejection of the Valar. And that past is important to all of Numenorian descent. Whereas the elf, whose name I can't recall, could just be speaking of how elves have memory that is nigh ever present. Someone like Nerdrotic will look at this more cynically or meta and out of fantasy by trying to go back to their activist roots by claiming that this is once again an assault by intersectional feminism led by an awoken warrior Galadriel.
And it probably led to yet another trailer being ratioed. At time of recording, it's currently sitting at 39,000 likes and 71,000 dislikes.
The goal of his videos, and not just this one of several on the Rings of Power, is to cause a stir in the beehive, and then there's this call to action. Go and dislike all affiliated content on the Rings of Power by Amazon. The like-dislike feature is a useful tool for gauging if content is good or not. Quite often, but this is the exact reason why the tool was removed from use. How can it be used to gauge quality when people come with a predetermined mindset, poisoned by someone else whose goal is to spread misinformation to induce hatred? This main teaser has not been accurately reviewed by the person because they wouldn't have even had... they wouldn't have made it past 10 seconds of it before they had closed the page after placing their righteous damnation. The act of rebellion, honestly, isn't really achieving anything, although it is less disruptive than when other protesters might block an entire motorway at rush hour.
And we end this epic trailer of corporate product mediocrity with diverse Harfoots walking down a hill. Badly. What's up with this one? Having trouble with the fake prosthetic feet?
I think he is just starting to run out of jokes to mock something perfectly fine when he comments on the walk of a hobbit down a hill. why am I even mentioning it? It just shows that my patience to watch this video several times is making me crazy too, and I am lacking originality.
Objectively, at best, you can say this is extremely average. The music, the visuals, I've heard from some that the visuals were stunning. No, they're missing heart, they're missing soul, they're missing Tolkien.
Do you think he would say anything else? Like, honestly, I would say the visuals are decent. From what I can see here, it looks all right, but I would also want to see more. I can't review the whole thing without seeing more. Sometimes you need to see the entire scene to get a feel for what looks right. But I can't say that they are missing heart and soul. I think he is being deliberately vague here because he wouldn't be able to actually articulate what he'd like to see himself. What is more hearty than some lusciously green countryside anyway?
The beauty of his books and what was done very well in the Peter Jackson original trilogy was in his language, for which Amazon has none to adapt.
So on one hand, he praises Jackson's trilogy here for the language that they used in it. However, there are definitely some easy mistakes that were made there, one being Tolkien's love for Germanic languages in context with the Northmen. Why did Theoden weep for his son's death and say no parent should bury their child when parent comes from French? They could have easily said father in its place, which has Germanic roots. I only mention this to point out that it was not ideal in all cases. Furthermore, Tolkien did love language. He was a stickler for language, but it didn't mean that he was so proud as he would, go and condemn people for doing things incorrectly like they did in this film. In fact, there's a clip here that shows how not only did he not correct an interviewer for his pronunciation of Sauron, he also then reiterated it in the same fashion.
Now, the Rangers, they protect men and hobbits from Sauron's servants, but particularly they seem to have a fondness for the Shire.
Morgoth, the prime mover of evil, of whom Sauron was only a petty lieutenant.
So yes, language is important, but he isn't going to correct people that maybe aren't quite as learned in his work, aren't quite as big fans of Lord of the Rings, that they mispronounce certain words.
Two trees of the Valinor tell Perion and Laurelin,
like Nerdrotic does with Helcaraxe or Laurelin tel Perion. No, because that isn't what connotes someone as a fan. And I don't think he would necessarily gatekeep certain aspects, because in the end, he wants people to look and enjoy Lord of the Rings and all of its legendarium.
This is one that we felt hadn't been told on the level and on the scale and with the depth that we felt it deserved. Depth, huh? With dialogue like this?
It is over.
You have not seen what I've seen.
I have seen my share.
You have not seen what I...
This guy is complaining about a trailer having a little conversation. This dialogue is heavily cut down and honestly it just highlights nothing. Is he expecting an entire verse of a Shakespearean sonnet, or maybe the actual Entwife song that he would perhaps like to reacquaint himself with? Yes, Tolkien is not political. However, the political divisiveness and anxieties racking this fictional island of Numenor, they are still interesting. And that could lead to some cerebral storylines that people really did enjoy in series like Game of Thrones. Oh no, did I just make a comparison with a franchise and claimed it as good? This doesn't mean that politics from the real world are entering the fantasy. It just means that there are similar situations where there are troubles ahead and people have to negotiate and talk about these things rather than just picking up a sword and charging to war.
This is my favorite quote: the canons of narrative in any medium cannot be wholly different, and the failing of poor films or TV show adaptations is often precisely in exaggeration and in the intrusion of unwarranted matter, owing to not perceiving where the core of the original lies. There was light. Ah, yes, a time before woke intersectional vandalizations of our beloved stories. Sauron is after me, Lucky Charms. Exaggeration.
There is a certain irony here in that his entire message and agenda is always to exaggerate the perceived bad or to make it up and to then intrude with his unwarranted matter. This is the constant reminder of his agenda masked by the one he perceives in every frame of this trailer. Although you could even turn that around on me with this video, couldn't you, huh?
This trailer and the teaser for this trailer, which mysteriously showed up on YouTube, are both getting ratio.
All right, boys and girls, it is now time for another call to action, to go and dislike all these videos, and let's read out some of the comments from our noble crusaders. Why does this person have to be so extreme? And if we are going to get into the semantics from earlier, did the showrunners not already say that this is not a prequel and is not directly associated with Lord of the Rings? Hence, it is not replacing anything. Of course, this level of zealotry is fully supported by Nerdrotic because it fits his agenda.
Oh, I don't doubt this one at all. I think the Hobbit movies are about to get a lot more appreciation than they did when they were first released.
No, I don't think the Hobbit films will get more appreciation. I think the people who like them, and the people that didn't understand that the story can still be read in the book and it has not been replaced. The only sadness is that you were not able to see it brought to life as you wholly imagined. The only thing is that everyone has a different vision and you can't please everyone. That is the unspoken truth, that everyone hoped that they would get to see their vision brought to life, but all but one person then is going to be disappointed. Instead, there will be elements that you enjoy and elements that you dislike. If the balance is off as a whole, then you're going to be disappointed, knowing that there will not be a budget for a production of this magnitude again to satisfy your want. So it might feel like a missed opportunity, and that's pretty rough.
That wraps it up for this trailer reaction. I thought the effects, the best thing about it, were average at best. The music was average at best. The dialogue was terrible, and everything about the story, what little we know, is wrong.
Of course, everything sucks with this show, and it has not even been seen yet, so it can't be corroborated. Although, as I record this on the 1st of September, the reviews are coming in and claiming that it's already better than The House of the Dragon, which I have seen 2 episodes of and thought was pretty good. So anything that trades blows with a show that has had their influential source material creator hands-on, I'd say that's pretty hopeful, because J.R.R. Martin has been working on that show.
As I've said before, I would love nothing more than for this to be the best show on television. Unfortunately, although I haven't seen the show yet, I've seen this story before.
There, do you see that? He's lying. Throughout this video, when has he tilted his head like this so awkwardly, or broken eye contact so aggressively? It's an obvious tell for telling porkies. He does not want this show to succeed. I'm not sure if he even wants it to be canned though, because then he can't make videos on it. But he does want people to dislike it too, although that's maybe being diplomatic. He probably wants people to feel a burning hatred for it without even watching it, or even if they know anything about it, because that is the entire focus of his videos. Do not like this show. Why? Because buzzwords about politics, and politics are the things that cause you sadness and misery. This show is propagating your sadness and is mocking you. Folks, yeah, keep an open mind, and remember that critical thinking is not thinking critically of everything. Like, some things can just be good, and like, you don't have to enjoy everything about it, but come on, don't be so dark and dreary and fall into this pit. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I wonder if this is going to get a big backlash. We shall have to wait and see. But Rings of Power comes out tomorrow. Woo! Good day.
YouTube removed the dislike button to protect the smaller creators.